Thank you. Good morning. I hope you've had enough coffee to get you through my presentation. For those that don't recognise me, and thank you, Colette, I am Scott Murray, the Managing Director of ECT. We are, for our sins, a licensed asbestos removal contractor. But I was fortunate enough to be invited to this presentation by Colette, mainly about DCU development. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Leave well enough alone. Let sleeping dogs lie. Don't rock the boat. Don't stir the pot. A cautious phrase advising us of the weight, the merits of change. It's a timeless piece of advice that just as relevant today as it was when it was coined. So I suppose the question is why? Why did we start on this journey to remodel a decontamination unit, commonly known as a DCU? Well, that's a really good question. But let's ask it from a different point of view. Let's ask as if we were the supervisor. A day in the life. The jockey wheel was snapped away from the A-frame. A manual handling nightmare. I'm not leaving my valuables in there. No external tap available. We need to fill the water tank. No water filter spanner in the DCU. No storage space for all these consumables. I know, let's use the lockers. The dirty end door won't self-close. That's a nightmare. We can't start. We've gone live and I need to check the MPU gauge. Where's the DCU air test from the previous job? We're on a construction site, which is 110 volt mandatory, but we've got a 240 volt lead with a 3-pin plug. Doors don't lock when slammed shut. We have to enter a code. There's no soft ground to insert the earthing rod. The water pump has burnt out again. The unit doesn't fit in the space provided because of the flue sticking from the top, and the floor is wet and slippery. These are just a few things that contracts managers are called about pretty much on a daily basis. But just imagine what it's like trying to complete that job as a supervisor. Market research and employee engagement. On receiving a call from a sales representative, we were invited to a launch of a new combined DCU and welfare unit. It was then that we decided that a small team should be created to investigate the best the industry had to offer. And how we did this was hiring in the best DCUs that all the suppliers had available, and we literally tried them on all of our sites. Our supervisors were particularly keen to get involved, and it was with their valuable input that we put together a list of all the pros and cons of the different units. Frustrated by what was available as an off-the-shelf offering, and after considerable employee engagement, we decided that there was only one thing to do: redesign a new DCU, incorporating all of the pros from all the different units, but also the latest technologies and innovation. So now the challenge was to find a partner. DCUs haven't changed that much since I started as an operative for Essex Insulation in the mid-80s. In fact, I worked on a job, Old Church Hospital. That hospital isn't there anymore, and nor is Essex Insulation come to that. The next time I used a DCU was at Severals Hospital in Colchester. That hospital there isn't there anymore either. I still am though. Enter stage left. So during a Contractors Association's AGM, whose name I dare not mention here, of which I was chairman, I sat with SMH. It was over a nice glass of Chablis with Dean Rowe, that we hatched our cunning plan. Compliance versus best practice. Well, it should be recognised that many of the DCUs on the market are actually compliant with CAR 2012. However, I've always believed that regulations and minimum standards that must be attained are the best practice is achieved by striving beyond what we must do and imagine what we could do. ECT made available the financial, managerial and time resources to collate a wish list of ideas and modifications that would make the unit more practical and user-friendly. Combined with SMH technical expertise and build quality, which I'm sure Andy will talk about in further detail later, we were able to see our goals realised in the version 1 or V1 model. So the V1 improvements at a glance. Well, firstly, it was the first 110 volt DCU. So we incorporated a step-up transformer inside the unit, which allowed 110 volt power supply being fed on the construction sites, and it was stepped up inside the unit. A point of interest there, the RPE manufacturers aren't very keen on 110 volt because they still insist that the guys take their masts home and charge their masts at home. And so that's why they insist on 3-pin 240 volt. It's one of those things we come across when we was playing around with modifications. I'm not going to go through all of the V1 improvements, but it shows that there was a stepping stone approach. We got to a point where we thought we'd come up with all the things that made it better and safer. And basically, here's some of the problem solving. So as I mentioned, the 240 volt, and it needs earthing rod. The new electrical system was a 110 volt model, and no need for an earthing rod. So that sorted that problem straight away. You know, no hammering rods into concrete floors and things like that. The height of the unit. See, this is particularly problematic in car park areas. So the new boiler was introduced and tested with a horizontal flue. And all this is for the V1 model, remember. User safety. This was really important. And as I say in a little bit later, I thought I'd really sussed it with this. The first ever audible safety alarm introduced with a panic button inside on all the sections. Waste pump burning out. We put a timer relay system, and the pump would automatically come on and off without user intervention. So you couldn't, it wasn't like the old DCUs where you press the switch and it just runs until someone remembers to turn it off, subsequently burning out the pumps. The doors don't lock on closure without a code. We've introduced new slam locks that you don't have to press a code after. Other DCUs already have that, but this was all integrated from the pros and cons list I mentioned earlier. The dirty end door doesn't self-close. It's been a problem from day one of these DCUs. It's a problem even today. I don't know how many hours we've spent testing these hinges, but we've got new hinges. They were imported from Italy, I believe. But as I said, SMH talk about that more in detail. But we've done hours and hours of opening and shut doors. Honestly, you wouldn't believe how many times we've opened and shut those doors. Filling the unit with water. Well, if you've never had to fill a DCU, there's two places where you fill a DCU with water if you're not on live water, if you're not on a hose pipe. It's under the seat in the clean end, or it's in a port at about that height on the exterior of a decom. And you've got 25 gallon drum, and you're lifting it up and you're trying to pour it in, and you're getting it all over the floor. And it's just a complete nightmare. And so there, with the new unit, there was a new pump system that pumps the water into the tank. One of those things, you've gone live, you need to check the MPU gauge daily, twice daily, best practice. And to do that, you've got to put your whites on, you've got to put a mask on, you've got to enter in the dirty end, and you've got to check the gauge. So now you're relying that the supervisor's going to bother to do that for a start. And if he does, to make sure he puts on all the correct PPE and RPE. We've just put a vision panel in the side of the DCU. He can do that now. or she can do that now, by looking through the side of the DCU. You haven't got to even go in the unit. So that was all what we put in to the V1 unit. The Collect effect. So during the earlier part of this year, Colette gave a presentation regarding the progress being made in relation to female safety in our industry. And the ECT V1 DCU welfare unit was briefly discussed. Although I wasn't at that presentation, I believe that the general opinion was it was a good start. Obviously, I was somewhat disheartened at the V1's reception, so I contacted Colette in April, and I must say we had the most encouraging discussion about future improvements that must be made, and they were essential to addressing female safety. I thought the audible safety alarm system and panic button did exactly that. It wasn't designed and installed just for female users, though that was a major consideration, as we employ two ladies who regularly enter live enclosures, and their safety on our sites is paramount. Tanisha, who's with me today, is one of those ladies. So this is where Colette joined the team. In for a penny, in for a pound. Having received positive feedback on the V1 from our ever enthusiastic supervisors, operatives and female staff, just as before, we discussed potential future modifications and improvements in line with our long-term plan to replace the off-the-shelf fleet that we currently own. So I announced to the team that I had increased the R&D budget for the 2024 financial year, and more had to be done. Female safety must be addressed once and for all. The V2 twin DCU has its backer, and it really was back to the drawing board once again, because the V1 was a combined DCU welfare unit. This is a twin DCU. The target was to get the new design signed off, incorporated, improvements, modifications from the V1, and more importantly, trialing the door locking system that could be maintained even if the power supply was cut, which was the fundamental flaw of the magnetic locks being discussed by others. Was it possible to get the unit built and tested in time for this AGM? The gauntlet was well and truly thrown down, and the challenge was accepted by all. So there's the V2 at a glance. I'm happy to tell you the V2 has arrived. One of the modifications, although it's quite an old thing, having trackers installed in DCUs is quite difficult because the batteries fail, and the trackers fail as a result of no power. But we was able to see the DCU en route down from the SMH site up the road in Birmingham, and we saw it arrive during Lizzie's presentation, so we knew it was here. That's why we quickly nipped out to have a look, because it's the first time I've seen it as well. So it really is hot off the press. So at a glance, you can see all the wonderful pictures of it. You can see that you've got the green button for opening the door, the red button for locking it, and you've got the panic alarm that's underneath a plastic screen. You have to lift that plastic screen to hit the panic alarm, and that will release the doors. I'm moving on. Problem solving for the V2. So jockey wheel, an upgraded jockey wheel's been fitted. Lockers don't lock for the valuables. None of the DCOM's lockers ever locked, did they? They were just cupboard space. Well, all we've done is introduce the locks where you can put personal padlocks on them. Female safety, we've discussed a door locking system that is supported even when the power is disconnected. The lockers were used for consumables and was never empty for your clothes. We've now put storage space in, basic stuff, but makes it very simple. things move about in travel. Everything has a home. Everything's clipped to the walls. The spanners that you need are on chains so they can't get lost. We've incorporated bigger steps and larger handles inside and out, so it's safe for getting in and out. Those silly little stalls or step ups that we used to have. There was not enough room in the clean end, so we've reduced the room in the dirty end and allowed a little bit more room in the shower unit and the clean end where most of the movement is going on. And the generator doors that I'm forever buying, we've put special clips, sprung-loaded clips on them so they don't fly off around the M25. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. At first glance, if it ain't broke, don't fix it simply tells us not to tinker with things that are already working fine. But if you dig a little deeper into the sentiment, there's more to uncover. This saying is not just about leaving things be, it's a gentle nudge reminding us to consider if change is truly necessary. What do you think?